What's going on, college football fans? Welcome back to the First and Long College Football Show. I'm your co-host, as always, joined by my co-host Mason. Long time no see, folks. If you missed it, we did our overreaction show just a little bit ago here this Sunday afternoon, and here we are Sunday night. As promised, as usual, we are going to be going through our top 25, so we'll be revealing that. Love to hear from you guys. Drop a comment in the comment section. Let us know what you think about that and who you think should be in the top 25. Throw your whole top 25 in there. We don't mind. We'd love to look at it. And hope that you guys will hit that thumbs up button. Like I said, real quick, it is free. It is easy. It doesn't get much freer or easier than hitting that like button. So I certainly do appreciate it. And I know Mason does as well. Mason, how you doing tonight, buddy? We've got some matchups to go over today, as well as the top 25. We're going to be looking at Ole Miss at Florida, SMU at Virginia, Kentucky at Texas, Alabama at Oklahoma. Essentially, we're looking at all the teams that are in their conference title contention, in pole position to go to a conference championship. And we're kind of on conference championship watch, right? Lots of tied up knots atop all of these conferences, or at least a lot of them. How you doing tonight, man? You ready to break it down first and long college football style?
Yeah, man, doing good. Well, we were on earlier for those who didn't catch us, but only been a couple of hours since we were last on, so not a lot's changed. But I'm ready to break it down with you and get into your top 25, and then let's get started looking ahead to next week. That's how we roll around here, y'all. We talked about what happened yesterday, and today's a new day, so we're going to talk about what's going to go on next week. So ready to get into it with you, Mark.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's jump into the top 25 first. So this will be our top 25 headed into week 13 of the college football season. Guys, we've only got a couple of weeks left. It says week 12 on that there slide, but this is for week 13. We have updated this stuff, guys. So just FYI on that. All right, let's go through it here. We've got Kansas State taking up the rear, Mason. They drop another game. That's their third loss of the season. If it wasn't for so many teams having so many losses at this point, I would have dropped Kansas State out of the top 25, to be honest with you. They're so inconsistent. Certainly, there's been weeks this year that Kansas State has performed like a top 25 team, but there has been several, and I can think of even maybe one or two that they won that they did not look like a top 25 team in. So Kansas State kind of taking a back seat at this point, right? They don't control their own destiny at this point. Memphis, this is a team that's kind of just hung around that 25 to 45, pretty much throughout the season, right? And not a bad football team. We're not going to go into Memphis. We ain't got no Memphis Tiger fans watching this anyhow. Syracuse gets another win. Very, very impressive season there for Fran Brown and company. Kyle McCord over there playing for the Orange. They've really exceeded expectations of anybody that was going to take over Syracuse in their first year and go, with three, or I guess it's possible they could still take a loss or whatnot. But three losses so far this season. Get another win this weekend. Good stuff. Tulane has clinched their spot in the AAC title game against Army. So we're going to see a big game against Army this weekend. But, and an Army is obviously competing with Boise State for that spot, that one at-large spot there for a non-Power 4 conference champion. So Tulane is really got a chance to kind of affect a lot of other things that are going on in college football this weekend. So that or in conference championship weekend, and Army's kind of got to get over that obstacle of Notre Dame first. So kind of got an interesting little triangle going on there between those three teams. Iowa State at 21. Iowa State, they got another win this weekend, but really kind of stubbed their toe a couple weeks in a row there. Arizona State, big win this past weekend. Really, really big win over Kansas State. Arizona State this week is going to be hosting BYU. We're going to talk about that game on Tuesday, guys. So I hope that you guys will come and join us on Tuesday as we break that game down. Mason and I did not give Arizona State the respect that they deserved last week, or I didn't. Maybe Mason did. I don't want to speak for him. I can't really remember, but I was on the Kansas State train last week. I haven't even bet on Kansas State a whole lot this year, and I picked a really bad week to do it as Arizona State showed up and showed out, had a shutout going right there until the last quarter or so of that game. We talked about Army and everything they've got going on. That again is going to be a game that we talk about on Tuesday, 7:30 Eastern on the live show. That's whenever we do all of our big breakdowns here on the First and Long College Football Show. So that's going to be one of the games that we do break down. But Army will be on the road at Touchdown Jesus. That's going to be a really, really, really big game there with some serious ramifications for the college football playoff. And just a story that a lot of people have followed and enjoyed this year. If you've watched Army at all, and if you're an American, right? Kind of just an interesting story. I was thinking today, Mason, with that matchup with Notre Dame, it'd be hard as a Notre Dame team to get all fired up to try to go beat Army, right? But you better be ready because Army has got this ain't your grandpa's Army football team, and maybe that's a bad example. Maybe they were good with our grandpa. Anyway, I digress. 18 Clemson. Look, I don't really have all that much faith in Clemson. We kind of talked about them today in our reaction show, Mason, and I tend to agree with you that this version of Clemson looks more of like what we saw last year rather than what we saw during Deshaun Watson and NFL insert Clemson NFL quarterback and wide receiver combo here, right? It doesn't seem like that type of team right now. Although they got a good win against what I think is a good Pitt team. We've had Pitt ranked in our top 5 a bunch this year. Really had no choice with the way that they kind of dominated their schedule. But Clemson doesn't seem like a true contender to me. Let's just that it is what it is. We got them at the 18 spot. South Carolina is going to square off with them. South Carolina is who we got at 17. They're obviously going to square off at the end of the season. I love South Carolina in that matchup. I can't wait to see the spread and everything on that and get to talk about that game the last week of the season. BYU at 16, they we predicted that they would drop a game this week to Kansas. They did do that at BYU. But BYU, that was their first loss of the season. So they honestly had some grace, right? And they take a conference loss there. So now their back's kind of against the wall, right? Because you're going to be going on the road to Arizona State. Again, I think I may have already said it. Going to talk about that game on Tuesday, 7:30 Eastern. We hope that you guys will come and join us. Colorado, 15. Colorado's a surging football team, man. And it's unconventional, right? We kind of talked about this during the betting show on Thursday, Mason. They're using an extension of the pass as their run game, essentially throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage, real short dink and dunk throws, and then going vertical with the big plays. And it's really working. I mean, it's really working. They've got a pretty good little game plan there. We'll see how it works as the competition and the games and the magnitude of the games continue to increase for Colorado. They've exceeded all expectations, exceeded my expectations this season already. And the Fighting Primes are not done. Tennessee drops the 14 after dropping the game to Georgia. I think we kind of all saw maybe the bugaboo, I guess, for Tennessee at this point. Not able to hit the big plays, right? Not able to hit enough big plays. The defense held them in there, I think, long enough in the game for the offense to be able to put some points on the board. The offense just wasn't able to do it. Going against a really good defense in Georgia. And then I think we saw a more realistic test of the secondary of Tennessee this weekend, Mason. We had not seen a team that could really pass the ball go against Tennessee, and we hadn't got a chance to see it. And we did this weekend, and Georgia just so happened to be on their game as well, and really kind of cooked that secondary of Tennessee several times throughout the game and was able to hit multiple big plays. So now we've got a little bit more of a sample size on this Tennessee secondary, and I think, with the numbers coming back to reality, that makes sense. Texas A&M at 13. played nobody this week, just kind of the benefactor of other people ahead of them going down. We've got Boise State at 12. Just kind of got Boise State hanging around this 10 to 12, area. Some people, say, well, there's 2-loss team here ahead of them or a Texas ahead of them. Look, I think we all realize at this point that you're going to get credit for playing in the SEC versus the Mountain West. I mean, it is what it is. Boise State, I'm not saying they don't have any good wins, but they don't have any great wins, right? They've got some good ones. And I think that's, why they're considered in playoff contention and going to the playoffs as Boise State as a Boise State team. I think that's a huge, huge accomplishment. And to be able to do that with a loss on their record, it's not like Boise State's undefeated. I mean, they have lost a game. So, whether it be to number one or not, they have lost a football game, and that's a good loss. But there's no like great wins at this point, and the schedule in the Mountain West is just never going to be the same as what it is in the SEC. The fact of the reality is Boise State needs to be in the Big 12, I think. I really Boise State should have been part of the Pac-12, and then they would have already been a part of the Big 12 with all the movement that went on last year. But that didn't happen. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. I like Boise State. I think they're a decent football team, well-rounded. Got cooked through the air this past weekend. Absolutely got cooked. There, especially in the beginning of that game, were able to put up points and get a lot of turnovers and kind of cover that up and get the win this weekend. And that's what good teams do. Whenever they meet some adversity, they figure out a way to get around it. And Boise State's one of those teams that can beat you multiple ways. So I think that is impressive. Number 11, we got Miami. We all know at this point, Miami took the loss to Tech. I don't have much to add to that. We've got them kind of hovering around right there. Miami's going to have a chance to jump right back up because more than likely they're going to go to the ACC championship game, I think. But there's a tiebreaker situation in the ACC that I'll admit to you I don't fully understand. I need to look up the ACC tiebreaker. Apparently, Clemson is somehow ahead of Miami. Is that right? Somebody was commenting about that earlier on our earlier video, and maybe you guys can let me know in the comment section. Brush me up on what the tiebreaker is.
I think it's because Miami hasn't played as many conference games. So Clemson, I think all of their conference games are done. They're 7-1.
That makes
Miami's 5-1 right now. So
yeah,
I think until they get the rest of theirs played out, Clemson will be ahead.
And they don't play each other head to head, so there still will have to be a tiebreaker, because Clemson, I mean, they're not going to lose another ACC game, right? Because they're done. And then Miami has got to play Florida State at the end of the year? No, that's Florida that plays Florida State at the end of the year. So anyway, there's a tiebreaker there in the ACC, and it looks like it's going to have to be utilized, in my opinion. Mason, what do you think about 25 through 11? Maybe I can look that up real quick.
Yeah, so Miami's got to play Wake Forest this week, and then they got to go to Syracuse, which could be a really interesting game.
Oh, that could be a lot of points there.
Yeah. So if you thought Georgia Tech was tough, and you had to go to Atlanta to face Georgia Tech, I think that Syracuse is a bit of a different animal. And you got to go all the way to Syracuse in late November. Yikes. That sounds scary for a South Florida team to go to Syracuse in late November. Could be a little bit of a shock to the system there.
I think they got the dome, don't they? They got the dome, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah, because it used to be called the Carrier Dome. Funny story. They called it the Carrier Dome, which if you guys don't know, here's an advertisement for Carrier. Free advertisement. You could sponsor the show. It's an AC company, right? They make air conditioning units, and they had a game there a couple Septembers ago. As a Southern gentleman, I didn't realize how hot it actually got in New York in the summertime. Apparently, it gets very, very hot. The AC didn't work, ironically, right? So the Carrier buildings, Carrier AC units did not work. And it was like 90-something degrees in the building inside with no breeze, right, for the game. And that was a couple of years ago, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, how ironic is that?" But yeah, sorry about that. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. So anyways, yeah, Miami, tough game potentially at the end of the year. Let's wait and see how the ACC works out. If Clemson, since they're at 18 here, if they aren't able to get into the ACC championship game, they're out of the college football playoff. Um, Miami, I guess
Oh
much
yeah.
the same because if they're not in, then they're behind Clemson. The ACC, look, they shouldn't get two teams in. I'll be honest with you. Like SMU, if they were to win out and lose the ACC championship game, I don't think they should be in. They don't have a ton of impressive wins, and you can say the same thing about a lot of the Big Ten teams. There's not a lot of big wins. We'll get into them once we get into our Big Ten a little bit more, but or our top 10 a little bit more of those Big Ten teams. But yeah, outside of that, for this list, there's not a whole lot changing. South Carolina, I thought it was a good win against Missouri, but that was a team that you were a 14-point favorite to, and you won by 4 points. So, how impressive really was it? The offense kind of stalled in the second half there. Defense gave up a ton of points in the fourth quarter. Started to. I thought that the Chiefs was just going to straight up slide off that cracker there at the end of the game, but credit them to be able to come back and win that football game for the home crowd. Colorado, they're looking to me like the Big 12 favorites at this point. BYU going down, obviously. I just think I'm more impressed with Colorado's win over Utah because I said that this was a game that Utah could end up winning. Now, looking back on it with the injuries, they flip-flop from quarterbacks. Isaac Wilson gets the start. They had an emotional potential win the week before against BYU. Utah, I'm talking about, obviously. I think they were just a little bit too drained to actually get up and play in that football game.
And Wilson threw 3 interceptions too, man. I mean,
yeah,
that offense, if you give away 3 chances, that offense ain't good enough to rebound from that. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, and what you're banking on, if Utah were to win that football game or have any sort of upset, what you're banking on is the potential of Isaac Wilson, which I think is there, but he's not there yet. He needs another offseason, maybe another full season even. But as a true freshman, I like his skill set. I do think that he is a lot like his brother. He's a lot like Zach Wilson. I think that he's going to be a great college quarterback, but I think he really stands to benefit from another season. Anyways, we're talking about Utah here, and they're not even in the top 25. So let's get back on track. Yeah, not a whole lot has changed. Tulane, welcome. Memphis, welcome back. Kansas State just hanging on by a thread. My pick to win the Big 12, and they're playing bad. I think Avery Johnson's a little bit banged up. Not just that offense is just not good.
He doesn't. He's not anticipating throws yet, man. And that's
yeah.
I saw it. He threw one to Dante Cephas in that game, man, where it was like, I'm not kidding. It was kind of like, going and playing touch football or something with your buddies. Like Dante Cephas was open for 2 seconds before the ball left. What's his name's hands?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the recipe for throwing interceptions at this level of football. Now, nobody was able to capitalize on it in that instance, but I mean, that's why you see the inconsistencies with this guy. I mean, he's just not there yet, man.
Yeah, he's 1.5 reads and then he's tucking and running.
Mm-hmm.
Like he doesn't have it quite yet. I thought that he would be a little bit more developed at this point. He's not there yet. The offense as a whole is just pretty bad outside of DJ Giddens, which what a waste of a talent. Like once again, Kansas State has an amazing running back and nothing else on offense and a great defense. Like I really like their defense too. I think everything was there for them to win the Big 12, except quarterback's not ready yet. And no true threats on the outside. Even
imagine
Dante
if they had
Cephas.
Will Howard.
Oh yeah. I wonder Dang, could you imagine if they would have got him out of the transfer portal? My gosh. What
Oh
are they
man.
thinking? What are these teams thinking? Why? Let's pay more money for the young guy who's inexperienced and has no wins, and see what we can get. This isn't the NFL. You don't have unlimited funds, and people get tired of paying for shitty football.
Well, just people are running off experienced quarterbacks to not let the young guy run off. And it's like, where was he going to go? I mean, I guess he could have went somewhere. I'm just, you know, it's crazy. The tail wags the dog a lot in today's college football, and it's maddening at times.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's all I got with 10 through 25. We can keep it moving here.
Hey, I was gonna say we were talking about the tiebreaker in this ACC, so I'll just tell y'all real quick. So if there's a two-way tie for first, the team with the highest win percentage outright or via tiebreaker, which we know that none of these teams play each other, so it would be highest win percentage between those two. Then that would be the team that went. Now, if you've got a two-way tie between SMU and Miami, right, which I guess technically right now you don't because Miami has a ACC loss, so I won't get into that. But it would be overall conference win percentage, if it came down to that. So Clemson, where it shows them in first place right now, they're not actually in first place because of the win percentage situation.
Mm-hmm.
They would automatically lose the tiebreaker, even though they haven't beat any of those teams head to head. So just FYI, so that we're all that much smarter tomorrow whenever we go to work and we're talking about this. That's kind of how that tiebreaker would work there in the ACC. All right, let's keep going with our top 25. Number 10, we've got Notre Dame. Look, Notre Dame has just really continued to just do what they do, and was it an amazing performance by Notre Dame this past weekend? Considering the fact they were spotted 5 turnovers in that football game, I don't think it was that great. But I do like the fact that we're seeing more balance from Notre Dame at this point. A couple hundred yards through the air, a couple hundred yards on the ground. This team is really good at running the football. And the defense there is not another defense in college football that's top 10 in every single category. So this is the only one in all of college football that's top 10 in every single category. So is it the best defense in the nation? It might be. And nobody's talking about it. So that's something to consider, guys. I mean, this seems to be the year of the defense to me. I'm just looking at these teams. I mean, Ole Miss has got some firepower. Miami's got some serious firepower. Oregon, you could say, but I mean, there's been multiple times this year that Oregon's offense wasn't able to carry them. I don't know. And if you're sitting here comparing defenses, Notre Dame might be one of the better ones. I think they're definitely top 5 in the country. SMU at number 9, they're one of those teams that's powerful on offense and really good against the run, give up a lot against the pass, and I'm concerned, going into the ACC championship game or something like that with Miami. That game may end up being, 52-45 or something, man. I mean, seriously, that one is just going to be absolutely nuts, I think. Ole Miss at number 8. Ole Miss is an interesting team, aren't they? I thought about Ole Miss a lot today as I was doing this top 25 and, just kind of looking at their situation and the way they handled South Carolina, which at the time we thought wasn't even that great of a win, right? We didn't even think that was that great of a win at the time. And Ole Miss just made really pretty easy work of South Carolina, right? 27-3, I think was the final in that one. That was a good win. We didn't realize it at the time, but that was a good win. Beat Georgia. That's a good win, right? Lose to Kentucky. That's a bad loss. But at the time, I don't think Kentucky had quit yet either. So, and that was a loss at home. So really, it's inexcusable no matter what. And then Ole Miss. Who else did they lose to, Mason? They lost to LSU. Lost to LSU at LSU, and at that time, LSU was humming along, right? So I would say one bad loss, one mediocre loss, one really good win, and one good win. has got Ole Miss in the top 10 here in the in 2024, and got a head-to-head win over Georgia, so that puts them in a decent spot for the SEC championship. And they're going to need some other things to happen, obviously. I won't say a good position, but they are in somewhat of a position. Going to need some help. I think Ole Miss is a really good football team, y'all. I do, and I think it's going to take a really good game plan to take care of this team, and especially if they get Trey Harris back nice and healthy, that offense is just going to be that much tougher to deal with. Um, they can scheme it up offensively. Y'all know what it is with Lane Kiffin. I mean, I don't have to explain myself on that. He's one of the top 5 offensive coaches in the nation. I mean, cry about it. I don't love the guy, but he knows how to run that side of the ball, and it seems like they kind of got something going defensively. Because if you look at their point totals for this year, they haven't gave up crap to nobody. I mean, they really haven't. They've done a great job limiting teams offensively. So even in their loss to Kentucky, you know what I'm saying? Kentucky had like 20 points. So Ole Miss is one of those teams. They've been inconsistent at times, but man, when they've been on, they've been on. 7, Penn State. I hate Penn State even being up here, Mason. I'll just be honest with you. And y'all can cuss at me in the thing and tell me that I don't like the Big Ten or whatever. Type. I don't give a shit. Penn State is not one of the top 10 teams in the country. They're not. And we're going to all find out together. We're going to see it in the playoff because from what I see, this college football playoff committee, I'm with Kirby Smart. I don't know what they look for. Is it good losses? Is it good wins? I don't know. In this situation, it seems like the what's the old saying? The beauty is in the hole of the behinder, right? Is that what it is? I don't know. I don't know if that applies here. Maybe I said that wrong, but you get me, man. I just don't like this Nittany Lions team. I don't think they're that good. I think that they're been extremely creative. I think they've been extremely resourceful with the guys that they've got on their team, and kudos to the coaching staff. But offensively, this team is hamstrung, and they're not going to do anything in the playoffs when they get there. I'm just not against the defenses that we see in this on this slide. They're not. I mean, they're not going to do nothing to SMU either. I mean, even SMU, who can't defend the pass, doesn't matter. Penn State can't pass it. So I think that's one of my least favorite teams in the top 10, just to be honest with y'all. No good wins at all. A win over Illinois, that's the only good win they've got. A loss in which they didn't score an offensive touchdown. I don't know. Just lackluster to me. Georgia at 6, extremely inconsistent team, extremely volatile team. Don't know what you're getting week to week. Go out on the road to Ole Miss and absolutely crap on a paper plate in the middle of the field in front of 65,000 or whatever that stadium holds. And then turn around and do what they did this past weekend and play really, really good offensive football, protect the quarterback, and all the stuff they couldn't do the week before, right? And then we've seen the defense perform at the highest of highs and pretty consistent on defense. The offense has been what's inconsistent, but we've seen the Georgia defense play really well, and we've seen them play just pretty good. And so we've seen the ceiling and I think probably the floor for that defense as well. But Georgia's a bit of an enigma. 2 really good wins, multiple top 25 wins, multiple top 10 losses. Georgia had their back against the wall. They said playoffs started last week. Well, they're 1-0 so far, Mason. What do you think about 6 through 10?
Yeah, well, starting where you left off with Georgia, look, they've played the toughest schedule in the conference or in college football. That should matter. First of all, you've lost 2 of those games. Your 4 big ones are done. They're gone. They're over with. You had 2 back to back, really, right there with Ole Miss and then Tennessee. So really impressive for Georgia to be able to bounce back and win like they did against Tennessee. I've got no problem putting them at 6. You could put Ole Miss ahead of Georgia because they have the head-to-head and looked really good in that game. But you have to look at the entire schedule as well. And they lost to Kentucky, a Kentucky team that nobody's even watched in the past month. They've been on the side of a freaking milk carton. So, like, I get putting Georgia ahead of Kentucky as well. You look at what Georgia has done with their schedule, and then versus Ole Miss, who also lost to LSU, who just got throttled by Florida. I mean, the losses are inexcusable for Ole Miss. They're not inexcusable for Georgia. So for the entirety of that schedule, I think that Georgia has a better resume, even though they don't have the head-to-head. How you value that is up to your opinion.
Let me comment on that for just real quick. Mason P. I'm not going to say your last name on the show here. Thanks for watching and commenting. He says Ole Miss should be ahead of Georgia. They literally just dominated them. Okay, I got you. Should NIU be ahead of Notre Dame because they dominated them? Should we have NIU at number 9? I mean, I get what you're saying, and you can completely argue that point. I'm not trying to be an ass or something, but I'm just saying, Ole Miss has a really bad loss to like a 3 or 4 win team this year, right? So how do we weight that? I mean, talk about inconsistent. I mean, we've seen some inconsistency out of Ole Miss, and they lost a game to an LSU team that, you can say, well, it was nighttime at LSU. It was nighttime at LSU when Alabama went in there and dominated their ass. So Ole Miss has 2 pretty bad losses.
Yeah.
To teams that are not in contention, no longer ranked, right? Neither one of them are ranked. So, yeah, Georgia has Ole Miss has a really good win, right? They have 1 really good win. Georgia has 2 really good wins.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of my argument there, Mason P. I appreciate you watching, man. Thanks for coming out. Go ahead, Mason.
Yeah, but I will say, and you kind of answered this when you were talking about Ole Miss. I do think they should be ahead of Penn State because they do have actual big wins. I know Penn State only has 1 loss, but
you're right. You're right.
I mean, and you even said it. I don't, you don't even want them in the top 10. I completely agree with you. What I want is to see Penn State play an Oregon. I know that they played Ohio State and lost, but I want to see them with a loaded schedule. And this is just the trend in the Big Ten right now. The Big Ten is down, y'all. The Big Ten is awful as a entire conference. They're terrible. They got Oregon and Ohio State, and all of a sudden, we're propping Indiana up, who has completely dominated the schedule that they've been given, but haven't played anybody. They haven't played a Penn State, an Oregon, or Ohio State. Y'all, there are 3 good teams in the Big Ten, and there's out of 18, and that's it. And we're propping these teams up, thinking that they should get as many teams into the college football playoff as the SEC. I think it's just absolutely ridiculous. We talked about Ole Miss. SMU has a chance to win the ACC. I don't think they do it, if I'm honest with you, Mark. I think Miami and that offense find a way to get right. But at this point, we're 3 weeks away from an ACC championship game. SMU absolutely deserves to be ahead of any other team in the ACC with what they're doing. And then Notre Dame, another team that doesn't play anybody. They got a good win against Texas A&M. That is a good win early in the season with a brand new head coach that was trying to figure out his team. But Notre Dame's a really good defense. So I think if that game were to be played today, it might have a different outcome. It would be much more competitive, I think, for both offenses, really. But that'd be something to watch there. But I think Notre Dame, if they win out, they deserve to be in the playoff. I'm not really going to pick at them too much.
All right, 1 through 5, there it is, folks. The show that hates the Big Ten, we've got Big Ten 1, 2, and 3. Go figure, right? Oregon is the closest thing we've got to a dominant team this year. Was not a dominant performance this past week. Mason, we saw, and I had to go back and I had to watch some of it today because I was watching the game, but it was kind of secondary background. I had other stuff going on that I was paying attention to. Dan Lanning did his whole fourth down, I'm going for it thing again, and didn't get it, and could have took 3, could have got 3 points and decided to, go for it one time and then fake punt. There was a fake punt in the game. Um, I, I guess he thought that they needed a spark against Wisconsin because things weren't going that great. But I don't know, man. Those some of those decisions to me, and we saw Kirby Smart do it. We saw Kirby Smart do it whenever he first came to Georgia. Felt like he needed to pull a string every once in a while, and it almost never worked. Right? It almost never worked. Um, Look, Oregon gets the win. No big deal. It didn't cost them anything. Everybody's entitled to have a bad game every once in a while, especially in this year's college football. And let's be real, Wisconsin hit on some big plays in that game. Averaged over 13 yards per catch, right? Or 13 yards per attempt passing. So they were able to hit some explosives. And then there's, obviously some pieces still missing for Oregon, but I don't know, man. I just that was a little bit of a tough performance. Dylan Gabriel runs into some issues whenever he gets into the red zone. We all know at this point he doesn't have a rocket arm. He's not throwing the football 60 miles an hour or nothing. The windows get tight in the red zone. He does tend to try to still force him in there. He's got the most touchdowns of any quarterback ever. So I don't want to pick too much, but it has happened several times this year where he gets in the red zone, and that seems to be where he throws the most interceptions, in my opinion. Is Oregon the most dominant team? Yes. Do they deserve to be number one? Yes, they do. And but I am ready to see them play another big game. It's been a bit of a disappointing run to the end of the schedule here, right? I mean, I'm not hating. It's just it sucks. I want to see big teams play other big teams, and that's not what we're getting out of the Big Ten right this second. We do have a big one this weekend, though. Ohio State and Indiana. That is a big one. It's going to be on at noon, unfortunately, which I guess it would be probably pretty doggone cold there in Ohio if they played the night game. But I digress. I'd love to see that one at night or 3:30. But it's at noon. It's the Fox Big Noon kickoff. We're going to talk about that game on Tuesday. Ohio State, I definitely feel like is one of the top 5 teams in the country. I think you could pretty much place them anywhere on here, right? The game against Penn State is where they're getting all their credibility. And I told you how I feel about Penn State. I'm not a huge proponent of Penn State. I don't think they're nearly as good as some of the other teams here in the top 12. I think Penn State and I think Boise would have an upper hand over Penn State. I think just about anybody in our top 15 would have an upper hand there. So, and it's not like Ohio State just beat the stew out of them or anything. Beat them pretty good. Nothing negative to take away from that win on the road, but Ohio State has one decent win and one good loss. And that's kind of what they're hanging their hat on right now. They're going to have a chance to beat an undefeated Indiana team this weekend. It's going to be easier said than done. Can't wait to break down that game. Indiana, we have at 3. I swapped out Indiana and Texas, guys. And to be honest with you, I feel like I could probably drop Texas down maybe even a little bit more. Texas is also one of those teams where it's like they don't really have the good wins. I mean, I don't they don't seem to really have that great of wins this year. I mean, I just be honest with you. This weekend they had their chance to really put it on Arkansas, couldn't get it done offensively, right? A nice, easy cruise to a 10-point win. I hate to complain, but I don't know. It was less than impressive in my opinion. Alabama, we talked about this before we got on the show, Mason. Alabama, it would appear that Alabama's got some momentum right now. And I think that they do. I think that there's definitely some truth to that. But Alabama has gotten at least 3 turnovers in their last 5 games. That's great. The defense is doing wonders. They're turning the ball over. That's a good thing, and I'm not complaining about that. But you're going to get into a situation eventually where somebody's not going to make 3 mistakes and hand you extra possessions and, you know what I'm saying, ruin their own offensive possessions. I'm interested to see whenever that happens. And, Jalen Milroe has kind of carried the rushing attack, at least last week he did. Going to need somebody else to step up. You're not going to go through and beat 3 top 10 teams to go win a national championship with just your running back running the football. It's going to need to be a team effort. And eventually you're going to have to just win on good hard-nosed football and scheme rather than getting turnovers. I don't know when that's going to be, but Alabama looks to be a shoe-in for the college football playoff, so I know that we're going to see it eventually. And they look to be a shoe-in for the SEC championship. And who they play, I think, is going to depend on Texas A&M there at the end of the season. Still got a couple of weeks of football. We'll see. But it looks like Alabama's got a good shot to get in there. What are your thoughts? The win, Alabama's win over Georgia, really just kind of catapulted this team. And we talked about it early in the season. Both teams were undefeated at the time. Whoever could win that game was going to go a long way. Well, we had no idea that it was going to make or break making the SEC championship. But as usual, Georgia and Alabama, that game either decides the SEC championship or it decides who's going a lot of times. And this year was no exception, even without divisions and all that stuff. All right, what do you think? 1 through 5.
Yeah, so Alabama, they look to be going to the SEC championship game. They've got OU and Auburn left on their schedule. I think that they handle OU. I think Alabama is finally figuring out their offense, and I don't know what took them so long to realize that their best offense is with Jalen Milroe as a running back. Like, it doesn't – we could have told you that 2 years ago. But finally, they're getting things going with the offense. Jalen Milroe is the best running back in college football, period, and he happens to be a decent passer as well. And look, I'm kind of joking about his arm. I think when he does make the throws, it looks beautiful. I think that he really has a lot of potential as a pro, and this season he can make the throws, but he's not perfect. And Alabama hasn't had very good pass protection. I think that's been a real issue for him as a passer throughout his career at Alabama. So I say that jokingly, but I like Kalen DeBoer. I like what he's doing with Jalen Milroe. Now it seems like Alabama is finding a rhythm offensively and defensively. I think defensively, they're probably not getting enough talk for the progression that they've made on that side of the football. Womack just took a ton of flack there in the Georgia game where they just kind of fell apart, and really that second half of that game for the next 2.5 games, they really struggled defensively, and it seems like they've gotten that back on track. The defensive line at least is playing much better. They're getting turnovers on the back end of the defense. What are they going to do if they don't get the turnovers, though, is my question. You can kind of drive on Alabama, and then all of a sudden you get in the red zone and they take the ball away. They kind of flip the field in that sense. So what happens when they face a team in the SEC championship game that doesn't turn the ball over? We'll see. Texas at 4. I don't think Texas is the number 4 team in the country. I think you could easily put Texas behind Ole Miss, maybe even behind Penn State. They're really similar to Penn State. They benefit from a very easy schedule. They don't have a great win. Michigan's not a great win. Vandy, you beat them by 3 points, right? Florida laid down and completely just let you do whatever you wanted in that game because they were looking ahead to LSU since they didn't have their quarterback. And Arkansas was in that game pretty much the entire game. So
yeah, if Taylor Green had not gotten injured against Tennessee, that knee, I wonder if that game isn't a little bit different. I mean, I just have to be honest. I mean, it shoulda, coulda, woulda. Hindsight's 2020. Blah blah blah. Taylor Green wasn't able to run the football effectively this weekend, and without that scheme at Arkansas, without the quarterback being able to run successfully, it's really kind of moot. It really is. They are quarterback run centric in that system, and I think he took off a total of 16 times and got like almost no yards. Seriously,
yeah.
And obviously a few of those were sacks as well. So he was sacked multiple times. Yeah, that was a poor performance from the Arkansas offense, but I'm trying to give the credit to Texas's defense. I thought they played really well, but not what we're used to seeing out of Arkansas because they didn't really turn the ball over a whole lot, and that was kind of the whole thing with them.
Yeah, and what's really surprising with Texas, we kind of gave them we had a lot of questions this season with Texas's defense. As good as they were last year against the run, we were saying, all right, you lose Murphy, you lose Sweat. What are you going to do against the run? They've been decent. But then on the back end of the defense, where we also said that they were vulnerable last year, the transfer portal pieces that they got have been phenomenal. I think that Texas and their defense, as good as they are, they're led by the back end. And I do think that Texas has one of the best defenses in the country because of that. I don't have much to say about Texas's defense. The offense is where you have a bunch of questions. Let's see what they do. They've got Kentucky this week. Kentucky's not playing anymore. They quit playing a while ago. I think they'll handle them pretty well. And then you got Texas A&M at Kyle Field. I think as of right now, I'm telling you that Texas A&M is going to win that game. We'll see in a couple of weeks whenever that game gets played and whenever we do our preview exactly how I'm feeling. But right now, I'm leaning A&M in that football game. I'd be crazy not to, in my opinion. Indiana, Ohio State. Let's see what they can do against each other. Get one of these two teams out of the top three after this week. I'd like to see it be Ohio State. I guess they would have two losses at that point with no great wins up against all these SEC teams that have two losses. How does the committee value that if they are going to lose to Indiana? I don't think it's going to happen. Indiana has been a great story. I hope it happens as like just an outsider looking at this football game and knowing the story behind Cignetti and Indiana, having a brand new coach. This is his first year. They're playing outstanding football, even though they haven't really had any tough games. But I'm starting to see a little bit of regression. Really, since the Nebraska game, I've seen them slide just a hair. Curtis Rourke, obviously was hurt, but even since he's come back, they haven't really been quite as dominant, which is tough to uphold. I certainly understand that. I mean, they literally didn't trail in a game for like 10 weeks, so it's pretty impressive what they were doing. But I don't think that they're going to win this football game, but we'll have to dig into it more, and maybe we can come to a different conclusion on Tuesday night for that show, for our preview show. And then Oregon's number one. Nobody's really denying that. I thought that they struggled this week, but it was their 8th week in a row playing, traveled across country, and it was certainly a trap type of scenario. I don't think that Wisconsin's the team that can come up and get Oregon in a trap type of game. That they don't have the talent for that. So, but yeah, Oregon's number one team. Nobody's going to question that.
There you have it, folks. There's our top 25 headed into week 13. Here we go. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. If you're new to the First and Long College Football Show, hit that subscribe button. And if you haven't done already, hit the like button for us. Help us get the good word out of this awesome college football community that we're building here. I'm sitting here laughing at the comment section. Small world here on YouTube, I can tell. Y'all come join our little community. Come have some fun. We're going to go through some game breakdowns now, y'all. Oh, Lord, here we go. I see some more comments coming in now. All right, we're going to jump into these things. Ole Miss at Florida, SMU at Virginia, Kentucky at Texas, Alabama at Oklahoma. We're going to jump into them. Thank y'all so much for tuning in. Which one we want to do first? I guess we'll go in chronological order here. Might as well. We'll talk Ole Miss at Florida about that. Noon kickoff in the swamp. Florida is catching 9.5 as the underdog here at home. Over under set at 55.5 early in the week. Numbers are subject to change. Check your local listings. Florida had an impressive performance this past week, Mason. I mean, there's really, look, LSU was able to sustain drives against Florida this past week. That is one thing that I can say. We talked about this on the overreaction show that we did earlier on Sunday, if you're watching this later in the week. But Florida lost the time of possession battle 2-3. LSU controlled the ball for 2/3 of the total clock time in that game against LSU. So how in the world was Florida able to pull that one out, Mason? I still don't fully understand that, and I know part of it is the fact that LSU does not have an ability to run the football. Well, here we go. Here's Ole Miss, who also struggles to run the football. So Ole Miss and LSU are and I don't want anybody to get offended by this because defensively they couldn't be farther apart, but offensively they are very similar. So Florida is going to kind of see, I feel like, a lot of the same stuff, a lot of the same style 2 weeks in a row here offensively, where they just had some success defensively against LSU. The big difference here is the defense for Ole Miss in this one. That defensive line is no joke, Mason. They're absolutely no joke. We all saw what they did to Georgia and that Georgia offensive line, and you can say it was a bad game or Georgia had guys out. All of that may be true, but I saw what I saw, and this defensive line for Ole Miss was blowing Georgia off the football, and that's not words that we say a lot. So I've got a lot of faith in this Ole Miss defense. And everything's on the line here for Ole Miss. Now, do they control their own destiny? No, but they've got to put a good foot forward here going on the road to the swamp to keep in good standing in the SEC conference as, tiebreakers work themselves out. Teams go head to head here towards the end of the season, and you just got to kind of hope for a loss from somebody else while taking care of business. I think that the storyline here is kind of funny too, considering the fact that Florida was just talking about they were going to get a new coach not that long ago. All the fans were anyway. And there was everybody said Lane Kiffin immediately. Lane Kiffin, if he's offered the job, he's leaving Ole Miss. He's headed to Florida. And then Florida comes out, Scott Strickland comes out and says, we're sticking with Napier, whether that's genuine, whether that's to keep recruits on board, who knows? Who knows? We're not Florida insiders. I won't speculate. But I do think that is kind of an interesting underlying storyline, and I'm not ruling out the possibility that Lane Kiffin doesn't end up at Florida one day. I think that is a possibility for sure. Maybe even so much as like a 10% possibility, which I would think would be a lot as far as odds. I think it's likely he could end up down there one day, but not this Saturday, buddy. I don't think Florida is well equipped for this. DJ Lagway did not run the ball hardly at all this past weekend. We know that he had the hamstring injury against Georgia. I don't know how the dude's even on the field. I'm just going to be honest with you. I don't even understand how that works. Is it the Gatorade? I don't know what it is. But he's out there, and his passing game hasn't suffered. It looks a lot the same, pretty explosive. Florida gets some explosive plays in the pass game when he's at quarterback. Is he the most efficient? No, not the most efficient, but like I said, that pop play is worth it. You think that Florida's going to be able to run the football enough in this game to be able to hang with Ole Miss?
Do I think that Florida is going to be able to run?
Because if Florida can't run the football, then, they're just going to get absolutely murdered here, buddy.
What's interesting about this game is both teams, like you can't really look at the season stats for this football game and try to draw a conclusion out of that because DJ Lagway hasn't played all season. Yeah, Montreal Johnson is back. He looked pretty good last week against LSU, but do I think they're going to be able to run against Ole Miss? Probably not. Probably not. The good thing is this freshman quarterback, DJ Lagway, has one of the best deep balls you can find in college football right now. This guy is absolutely slinging it. I think he is the truth. I think that he is going to be a phenomenal college football quarterback. Is this a game where he can really maximize what he's given? My thing is, I don't think that Florida has the pieces at receiver to really do damage to this secondary of Ole Miss that is susceptible. It's certainly more susceptible than the front seven for Ole Miss's defense. And while I think they have the quarterback to take advantage of it, I don't know if they have necessarily the pass catchers. So no, I don't think that Florida runs the football very well. you're going to see a similar clip that Miami, or excuse me, that Ole Miss has been given up all year long. They're second in the country in rushing yards per game, giving up 79.9 per game. Offenses are only averaging 2.2 yards per rush against Ole Miss. I think that trend continues, even though Montrell Johnson is great, even though Lagway, when healthy, is a very dynamic runner. You're not going to see him run this game. That he's all they got. I mean, this would be a huge win for Florida. And look, I think that the stadium is going to be absolutely bonkers. They went bonkers for LSU. Imagine bringing in a top 10 team like Ole Miss. Gainesville is going to be erupting. And we've been saying it. Kirby's been saying it. The SEC is a tough place to play at on the road, right? Gainesville is one of the toughest places to play in the SEC, let alone the entire country.
Even when they suck.
Even when they suck, this could be a little bit of a weird game. Realistically, both coaches are coming off the best wins of their careers at their respective programs. Billy Napier finally won one, beats LSU, and then Lane Kiffin, of course, beats Georgia. Finally gets over the big game. And that's something that people doubted his ability to be able to do for his entire career, not just at Ole Miss, but for his entire career. People have doubted Lane Kiffin. So both coaches get the big win under the belt. Both teams have some momentum going into this football game. I think it could be pretty weird. I think this one could get sideways. I think the line is right. When you look at what Ole Miss did to Georgia, you might say, yeah, Ole Miss should be favored by about 20 against Florida. Well, Florida's playing pretty good football. Vegas knows what they're doing, and makes this line really tough to bet against. I really wanted to take Florida in the points, but this is a pretty stingy line. I'd like to see it get over 10 at least.
Oh, it will.
I do think that this is going to be a bit of a tight game, but I like Ole Miss to win it at the end of the day. Also, I forgot to mention, but I really like Florida's pass rush. I thought they brought pressure the entire game against LSU, and you're going to have to do that against Ole Miss as well. Like you said, a similar offense to what LSU wants to do. Can they do that and be effective against Ole Miss's offensive line? I mean, if they're doing it against LSU's offensive line, who's to say they can't do it against Ole Miss's? The difference is LSU is built a little bit more on the deep ball, whereas Ole Miss can get it out nice and quick and not allow the pass rush to really be effective against them. And they sort of make up for their deficiencies on the O-line, which is the weakest part of this offense. So I think scheme-wise, Lane Kiffin can kind of scheme around that. But how do they prepare this week? I think that's the biggest question. What is the game plan for the Ole Miss offense going into this week, going up against a Florida defense that seems to be finding their own with their pass rush here recently?
Yeah, and on the other side of that, Ole Miss's pass rush, number one in the country in tackles for loss and sacks. So number one or number two, they've been kind of back and forth. Florida has allowed 10 sacks all season. That's 27th in the country. This Florida rushing attack is 80th in the country at about 145 yards per game on the ground. Something's got to give here. And for Florida to have success, they're going to have to be able to run the football. You say Montrell Johnson is back. I assume he'll probably be back in a better version this week than he was this past week. And I think that's really good news for Florida. I'm with you, Mason. I'd love to bet on Florida here, but I got to see it get to 10 or 11. And I think that we're definitely look. This line is begging you to take Ole Miss. Just admit it. You're watching this breakdown right now. You know damn well that Vegas is calling out to you. Give me your money. Give me your money. You know you want to take Ole Miss. You think that Ole Miss is going to win this by 21. And that's the trickery involved here. Tune in Thursday. We're going to talk more about this game, more than likely, on our Best Bet show. That's called Between the Lines. It's a little play on words there if you don't get it. Come join us. That's usually around 8:00 Eastern every single Thursday. We give you our best bets against the spread. This will probably be one of the games that we'll talk about on there. We'll see where this line moves between now and then. And I hope that you'll subscribe to the First and Long College Football Show if you haven't done it already. Hit the like button for us. Good luck this weekend. I appreciate it. All right. Thank y'all for tuning in. Certainly do appreciate it. If y'all haven't hit the like button yet, please do that for me. Real quick, please. We got one down. We got 3 to go. Let's blaze through here real quick. Let me get on the right. Let me get on the right page here. Let me get on the right page here. All right. Y'all let us know in the comment section, what's your favorite game this weekend? I think most of y'all probably going to say Ohio State, Indiana. But what's your favorite game to watch this weekend? I am interested in that Indiana game, obviously. I pray Indiana can do something, Mason. I pray they can do something. It's a real David and Goliath situation going on there.
Yeah.
Everybody roots for the underdog, right? Unless you're an Ohio State fan.
I mean, we've already deemed South Carolina America's team for the SEC. Indiana's America's team for the Big Ten, obviously.
Absolutely.
Colorado's America's team for the Big 12. I guess SMU is for the ACC. Holy shit. We got a lot of favorites. Let's talk about
We got a lot of favorite underdogs.
Yeah. America loves an underdog story. I guess that's the root of the story here.
Yeah. But I'm also a believer that America needs like a bad guy. Alabama was like the bad guy, it seemed like, for a while there. Just like, I don't know, just that the dudes, the big guys on campus. You got to have those. So that way, otherwise you never have a David and Goliath. You just have Davids or Goliaths. All right, I'm trying to find this one this one's at noon. Here we go. SMU at Virginia. Virginia catching 9.5 points here at home. SMU has been an absolute buzzsaw this season with one loss there to BYU, who is a sure contender there in the Big 12 as long as they can hold it together here the last couple of weeks. Virginia has been kind of a snake in the grass, Mason. Last week, Virginia was able to make me some money, right? They were able to keep some of these games close. Were able to beat Pitt. That was the one I was betting on. I was trying to figure out which one it was. Go on the road, lose at Notre Dame this past weekend. I think that was pretty expected. Could have been a lot worse. 5 turnovers in the game. Virginia has been a team that's been really inconsistent. They gave up a lot of points to North Carolina, a lot of points to Clemson earlier this season. Had a really close game with Louisville, held that awesome offense in check there, able to beat Boston College. So it's been kind of a tale. Lost to Maryland. That's not a good team. So it's been really inconsistent here. Very, very, very much inconsistent. SMU has been super consistent, right? And I want to kind of, let me go back here on my notes. I just wanted to kind of look at this. ESPN has got a 78.2% matchup predictor in favor of SMU in this one. Kevin Jennings, ever since he's taken over for SMU, has really tore it up. 151 of 231 this season, 2,198 yards, 15 touchdowns. Been very impressive on the ground as well. Helped that Russian attack out a lot. Virginia has got a bunch of dudes that you really just have never even heard of, most of them, right? Not a lot of people have watched Virginia football. Calandria, the quarterback, been pretty good. Lots of interceptions this season. Here's the matchup that's going to make or break this. SMU has been great at defending the run this year, Mason. So I'm not sitting here thinking that Virginia is going to be very good on the ground. SMU has not been good at defending teams through the air. They've given up a lot of yards through the air. I'm interested to see in this one if Virginia is able to get something going by way of the passing game, right? That's going to be the big thing. Don't think they're going to be able to run the ball very well. What are your thoughts on this one as Virginia is catching 9.5 here? I feel like your brain tells you we just talked about Ole Miss or Florida. If you missed that, go check out the clip on our video section. Feel like this is another one of those games this week, Mason, that Vegas is begging you to bet on SMU because conventional wisdom and just what we've seen this year would make you think that SMU is absolutely going to kill Virginia. But going on the road in an environment that you don't know anything about, SMU being brand new to the ACC, obviously Vegas thinks something's up here, and there's still a possibility. And not to mention 58.5 points. That's a ton. Vegas is expecting a high scoring game here.
Yeah, and I think it's because Virginia, like you said, their best asset on offense is their passing game, and that's where SMU is weakest at. And then you look on the other side of the football, and SMU, I mean, they're best at running the football, but they can pass the game. I mean, SMU is a balanced attack, in my opinion. I think that.
Yeah.
I think since Jennings has come in, they've gotten pretty balanced and can pass the football really well. But similar to SMU's defense, Virginia does not defend the pass very well. They're decent against the run, but you still give SMU the edge in the run game as well. Look, to be completely honest and transparent here, I have not watched a single Virginia game through its entirety, right? Like, this will be my first time getting a really solid glimpse at Virginia and what the Cavaliers are going to be doing defensively, offensively, all that. But it looks like, just based on some of the stats on the year, they've been running a 2-quarterback system for most weeks. They've got Calandria and Musket in there and getting like significant snaps, it seems like. So how is that going to play? I mean, what's weird is they both seem to be doing like similar things, and that's kind of perplexing to me. But they're averaging a pretty good bit, in the past 10 games. They're 230 yards per game completion. So, passing effectively. I don't know, man. I would stay away from this. I already told you, Mark, I'm not betting on any noon games. First of all, for the rest of the season here, but I just, is SMU gonna come out here and lay an egg? I mean, I know it's at Virginia. I don't know, man. From a betting perspective, I'll have to do some more research to figure it out. But I'm still leaning SMU to cover here. I mean, nothing that I can see statistically tells me that SMU wouldn't be able to cover this. But like I said, I haven't sat down and watched Virginia play. And sometimes when you don't lay eyes on these teams, it's a little bit tough to gauge kind of where they're at.
Yeah. For Virginia to be able to beat SMU in this one, I think it's important. Like the way that Boston College was able to keep it close this past weekend, first of all, they got a turnover, but the turnover game was a wash. I don't think that was a big part of it. Boston College was able to win the time of possession and it was able to play some keep away and keep SMU from scoring 48 points. Because if you give SMU all their chances and you turn the ball over and you give them extra chances, they're going to score points. That's what this team does. Can Virginia play keep away enough and nuke the clock? I don't know that this is a good setup for Virginia. The best thing they got going for them here is they're at home, and you catch SMU where they were on the road this past week at Boston College, right? So no, it was at home. So they're coming off of a home stretch. I don't know. I just feel like this is a bad setup for Virginia. The sleepy noontime always worries me. Give me SMU minus 9.5 in this one. I think I'm just going to ride with SMU. Look, SMU's been unstoppable unless teams were either able to hold the ball and run it and nuke the clock, or get turnovers, right? And I'm not going to sit here and bet on Virginia to get a bunch of turnovers here. Give me SMU. I think they can win this thing by 10. This number is going to go up, guys. So if you're wanting to bet on SMU, I would go ahead and do it now. What are your thoughts, Mason? What's your bet on it?
Yeah, like I said, I'm leaning SMU to cover here. 58.5 seems like a ton of points for an SMU team that's going to probably not put a ton out there on film. They don't really need to run the score up, I don't think, unless they're preparing for a loss in the ACC championship game. I might go under with this one. I think that might be a safer play, just to bet the under 58.5. That's still a ton of points for an SMU defense that does pretty good, a Virginia offense that isn't fantastic by any stretch. So I think, to me, the under is the play here, but give me SMU to cover on the line.
Yeah, join us Thursday. We're going to probably talk about this game again. We've got our betting show every single Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern. It's called Between the Lines. We'll see where this line goes this week. Probably be a game that we do talk about. We're going to have more game breakdowns on our live show Tuesday night. That's every single Tuesday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern. We'll be talking all the biggest matchups of the week. This was just a little sampler. Come back and join us here at the First and Long College Football Show. Y'all are hilarious in the comment section. Everybody knows everybody. First of all, welcome in Brian B. I won't say your whole name on here, but everybody knows everybody. Where do you two know each other from? What show? And I got a feeling I already know, but I'll let y'all tell me. Brian comes in here and first of all, he says Boise State is criminally underrated. Let me know where they should be ranked or rated or whatever. I would like to know what your opinion is on that. You too, Double O'Neill. Where should Boise State be ranked? I'd like to hear from you two on that. And then it comes on here and says Sam and Double O'Neill here too. Let's see. Double O'Neill, you're never far away, it seems. Don't say my name 3 times in a row or I'll show up. Double O'Neill said, I'm a college football sicko. Sorry. Laugh my ass off. Yeah. We all got the sickness. And Double O, I saw you on Uncle Lou's show the other day in the comment section. He called you Double O'Neill, and I thought that was funny. Boise should be a solid pick for 8 right now. Okay. Interesting. You could argue it. Double O'Neill could definitely argue it. He is. We got 2 Boise State supporters in here. Holy cow. All right, let's keep it going. 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time, Kentucky at Texas. Texas is trying to keep their hopes alive for headed to the SEC championship in their very first season in the SEC. The schedule has been somewhat forgiving considering their first year in the SEC. Obviously have that lone blip on the radar, scab on the skin, if you will, from the loss to Georgia at home. And Kentucky has just been an absolute mess. Very inconsistent this season. We kind of talked about it before we got on air, Mason. It wasn't very long ago. Kentucky gave up over 300 yards rushing to Auburn, right? Didn't really have any interest in tackling anybody for Auburn that day. And then turn around and play very competitively with Tennessee the very next week. So Kentucky has been very inconsistent. They've beaten Ole Miss this year. They're one of the 2 teams in the country that has been able to beat Ole Miss this year. Held in there with Georgia. Now we kind of know more about what caused that with Georgia. Georgia's offense hasn't been nearly as good as what we thought they were at that point, but Kentucky has been a stingy team. We know that Kentucky has got the dudes on the defensive line. They've got some serious dudes right there on that D line, can cause a lot of issues for opposing offensive lines. I like a couple of guys in the secondary. The offense has been what's been a big issue for Kentucky. Moving the ball through the air, moving the ball in general has just been an issue. You can say that Kentucky kind of hit like some lucky explosive plays and that big win over Ole Miss. We kind of talked about that earlier today for some reason. But it's just been kind of a mess at the quarterback position. The offensive line, I think, has been a big complaint for Kentucky fans this season. Not up to par for Kentucky football. 20.5 points, though, Mason. That is a lot. Texas is a 20.5 point favorite here. And it is at home. So that probably spots you 3 or 4 points there. But My goodness, 20.5 is huge, and the over-under is only 47. So, not only is Vegas predicting Texas to pummel Kentucky by 3 touchdowns, but they're saying that the total score for the game is not gonna go over 47. That is interesting stuff there. That is called threading the needle, ladies and gentlemen, and it would be very impressive if Vegas could do that. We'll see what we bet on this game on Thursday, but what are your thoughts going into this one, Mason? We've talked about Texas a pretty good bit today. Um, some of the strengths and weaknesses of that team. I'm interested to see how this offense responds to Kentucky and that defense. I'm kind of the belief that I don't think this offensive line for Texas is quite as good as what we thought they were going to be. I'm not saying they're bad, but coming out of the Big 12 last year, coming over to the SEC, we've seen some situations where I didn't feel like the offensive line was nearly as good as what we thought they were going to be this year. The run game hasn't been very good. We know that due to injuries and things. Texas is kind of starting to get some guys back, but lost C.J. Baxter, and the defense has been really good. What are your thoughts here? What does Kentucky need to do to be able to compete in this football game?
Well, they need to score more than 20 points. They haven't done that since they played Ohio on September 21st. This isn't a good offense. Well, outside of Murray State, let me back that up. So they haven't done that in conference at all this year. This is what they've scored in conference: 6, 12, 20. They won that game, beat Ole Miss. I don't know how. Lost to Vanderbilt with 13 points, lost to Florida with 20, lost to Auburn with 10, lost to Tennessee with 18. How they got 18 points on Tennessee, I don't even know. That's actually kind of impressive. But the defense has not been bad. They're holding teams under 30 for the most part. This offense is just not what we expected it to be with Brock Vandagriff coming over. They are constantly flipping from one quarterback to another. They have no idea what to do on the offensive side of the football. So to me, if Kentucky is going to win, it's going to look really similar to what we saw against Ole Miss. Kentucky has to sustain drives, kick field goals, or get points somehow, some way, get points on just about every single drive, slow down the game, right? Allow Texas's offense to kind of play into what you're trying to do, get some 3-and-outs, force some turnovers, and Kentucky wins this game if they can keep it, if they can keep the total under like 40 points, right? That's how Kentucky could win. I mean, I think that they're going to need 2 or 3 turnovers. I don't see the shot plays happening, man. Against Ole Miss, there was potential there because Ole Miss has been giving up some plays over the top of their defense. Texas doesn't. Texas, the strength of the entire Texas team is on the back end of their defense. So if Kentucky's going to go for those lucky plays down the back end of the defense, I just don't think it's going to be there. I got Texas winning this one. I don't think it's going to be close. I really saw in the Florida game, after Kentucky lost to Vanderbilt, it seems like they've just completely quit. In the Florida game, this defense gave up 48 points to Florida, which is a bad offense. I don't think Texas's offense is very good either, but I think they're good enough to beat Kentucky. Give me Texas in this one at home too. It's a 3:30 game, which I like Texas in that time slot as opposed to 12 o'clock, which would be 11 o'clock Central Time. So yeah. So give me Texas in this one. I don't know if they cover 20.5. That seems like a ton of points. We'll see if this gets up above 21. I might be putting some money on that, on Kentucky to cover that, but make no doubt about it. This is a really bad Kentucky offense. I could see them also not putting up any points in this game because Texas's defense is pretty stingy. It seems like when Kentucky is able to methodically go down and score, it takes a couple of chunk plays for Kentucky to do it, a 30-yard pass or something like that. And I just don't see it happening against this Texas secondary. So I don't know as far as the spread goes. I could see it going either way, but I like Texas in this one pretty big.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, this is obviously a mismatch, and that's why we're seeing a 3-point or 3-touchdown spread here. Texas is a defensive led football team this year, and so their defense is going to need to show up here. I think they're not going to have any issue doing that. I think Kentucky does have a little bit of an advantage being able to run the football up the middle, but you can't do that all game. You're not going to be able to. I mean, you can't do that every single play. You're going to have some type of curveball, some type of changeup, and Kentucky just hasn't had it. Now, a couple Saturdays this year, they have had it. So is this one of those weekends? I don't think so. It seems to me like Kentucky's given up. But I not rushing to bet on this one. We'll have to see where the numbers go. Tune in later this week and see if we got any plays on this one. Y'all let us know in the comment section what you think the outcome of this one will be. All right. I just want to, y'all are more than welcome to have your opinion of Texas or whatever. But Brian B. Sarkisian is the original Saban protege. What has Sarkisian won, first of all? Except, well, I'll be nice. Sarkisian hasn't won anything. Plus, overall, has the most complete team in the SEC. Wrong. They've made mistakes, as with anyone, they are human, but on a neutral field, Texas would destroy. Texas couldn't destroy everybody at their home field, Brian. They just got killed by Georgia. So, no, they wouldn't kill everybody. And you're saying on a neutral field, that wasn't at Georgia. That was at Texas's place. So how are they, how is a neutral field going to help there? And furthermore, Texas dismantled Alabama and Tuscaloosa last season. That was at Texas last season, was it not? Or I know they played 2 years in a row. Regardless, Alabama went there and beat them the year before, and then blah, blah, blah. I mean, last year's last year. This Texas offense ain't near as good as what it was last year, guys. The defense seems better to me in certain ways. The defensive line is not better. They lost 2 first-round picks on the defensive line from last year. They don't have those guys in the middle, and they have not played a team yet that can expose the middle of that defense. They will run into them. It will happen. Georgia's not that team this year. They were never going to be that team this season. But it didn't even matter. Georgia beat Texas at their own game, really. Mm-hmm. Georgia's not even that great of a matchup against Texas, and was able to beat them at their own place by more than 2 touchdowns. So, I don't know. I just don't agree with that. I don't know what Texas has done. Laugh my ass off. Georgia got lucky. There you go. That's the only logic that anybody can put into it, and that's not logical at all. So I hear you guys. You're more than welcome to think that. I don't think that Texas even makes the SEC championship game, much less wins it. That's not this team this year. That's not this team this year. All right. And furthermore, not only is Texas not winning the SEC, I mean they've won 1 Big 12 title since 2009. Isn't that crazy? 1 Big 12 title, that big brand name. And they have beaten really nobody this year. Alabama at Oklahoma. SEC matchup. Alabama's going on the road. We got some family members going to this game, Mason.
We do.
Shout out to Pop. Shout out to my dad. They'll be headed out to Oklahoma to go check this one out. Just disclaimer, our Pop, our grandpa, he's a big Oklahoma fan, so I hope that y'all have an awesome trip out there going and visiting some family and rooting on your Sooners. I am not a Sooner fan myself, but for my Pop's sake and my dad's sake, making that long trip out to Oklahoma, I hope that Oklahoma is able to put on a show here. Oklahoma is a 14-point dog at home. These numbers are crazy. Don't it seem like some of these numbers should be higher this week? I mean, I don't know. Oklahoma hanging within 2 touchdowns of Alabama. We'll see about that. Over under set at 47.5. As I said, I'm rooting for Oklahoma. I'm rooting for the underdog here. This seems like a tough spot for Oklahoma. The defense, we know what the defense has been this year, guys. Oklahoma's defense has been good. There's just never mind about that. Only time I've seen the Oklahoma defense not play well is towards the end of games whenever they're worn down because their offense hasn't sustained drives. We've seen, I think, the offense maybe take a couple of baby steps forward over the last couple of weeks, towards the end of the season. Seth Luttrell is fired, the offensive coordinator. I think we see a couple of steps in the right direction, but they're not massive steps. And, maybe Oklahoma's able to get some help back at wide receiver. There was at one point this season, Oklahoma had the top 5 receivers on the team that were hurt at the same time. And while that's going on, the offensive line can't block anybody. So therefore, you can't get a run game. You can't even let a route develop. I mean, it's just been a comedy of errors offensively. Alabama, on the other hand, has been the benefactor of a ton of turnovers over the last few games. We've touched on this several times today here on the First and Long College Football Show. Alabama has been the benefactor of a bunch of turnovers over the last 5 games, like 15 of them, something like that. Eventually, somebody's going to not turn the ball over. I don't know that that's Oklahoma this weekend, though, Mason. I don't know if Oklahoma's able to be that straight edge football team, disciplined football team, not make mistakes to the extent that they're able to beat Alabama. Now, I will say this. Oklahoma is going to be able to stop the run. Are they able to contain Jalen Milroe? I don't know. I mean, we've seen Jalen Milroe in the last few weeks. I forget what game it was. Was it Missouri or who was it? I can't remember. Had 195 yards rushing or whatever. I mean, is it going to be one of those days? Are you going to be able to put a spy on him without sacrificing too much defensive integrity? I'm interested to see how Oklahoma plays this. Alabama's got to get some help from these running backs. Jam Miller's got to get going, right? Haynes got to get going. You're going to need some help. And Ryan Williams, it seems he's kind of quieted down some as the seasons went on. People have kind of figured him out a little bit more. You think the Oklahoma defense is good enough to be able to keep this game low score? And Vegas is predicting a pretty low scoring game at 47.5 points. I think that's relying on the fact that Oklahoma is able to stop the run in this game.
Yeah, and I do think that Oklahoma's defense is good enough to keep them in this football game. I'm just concerned about the offense. Now, the turnovers have been an issue for this Oklahoma offense. I mean, here recently they've been pretty good actually. Going back to the defense, they held Ole Miss to 26 points. Offense was only able to muster 14 against that defense, which isn't great. And then couple of weeks ago that they faced Mizzou and lose by a touchdown in a game they should have won. I mean, they had that game won in the fourth quarter, and we had been hearing all week that Oklahoma's gotten better. Offense is looking good. Jackson Arnold's looking better. They're starting to find a rhythm with their wide receivers. Offensive line still can't block anybody. That hadn't changed, but I saw some progress with Oklahoma in their offense against Missouri, who turned out to be a pretty good team. I mean, based on how they played South Carolina. So really, outside of the Texas and South Carolina blowouts, I mean, Oklahoma's had a pretty good little season. They lost by 10 points to a really good Tennessee team. That's a top 5 team before they lost to Georgia. Beat Auburn. Lost by 12 to Ole Miss. Lost by 7 in a game they should have won against Missouri. I mean, Oklahoma's played pretty decent football. Defensively, they're really good. But the offense, they don't play complementary football. Now, going to Alabama, I think that their defensive line has been playing better. I'm wondering if they're going to send a bunch in this football game and try to pressure this Oklahoma offensive line that has been really bad. I mean, they're last in the country in sacks, giving up 4.1 per game. That's not good. Not good at all. But surprisingly, and you mentioned Alabama and their ability to intercept the football. Oklahoma doesn't throw a ton of interceptions. They're 24th in the country, averaging half an interception per game. Probably because they don't have a lot of pass attempts. because they're not really sustaining drives. But their issue is in fumbles. They're 133rd in the country, averaging 1.2 fumbles per game. They got to clean that up. I think if Oklahoma cannot turn the ball over in this football game, with the way that their offense has gotten better and progressed, I do think that they can keep it within 14 with Alabama. I think the defense is kind of set up for success against Alabama in this game. Look, nobody really runs on this defense, and it's not so much because of their defensive line, which is really good. It's really because of their secondary. Their secondary, Billy Bowman, a couple of other guys, safeties come up and play the run really, really well. So how they handle Jalen Milroe, I think is going to decide this football game. But I like Oklahoma to be able to keep it close here and to be able to contain Jalen Milroe with a lot of speed on the back end of this defense and how they play the run. So yeah, I'm taking Alabama to win, but I think Oklahoma at home keeps it close. Give me Alabama by about 8 points in this one.
Yeah, I think that's about right, Mason. I think that the Oklahoma defense is going to be able to keep them in this game. I mean, that's been the mantra of this team. I think they're able to do a couple of things offensively. There's got to be a wrinkle put in here, something like that. My pop is good luck. I know he's good luck. He's gonna bring the Sooners a close game there out in Norman. I just know it. So give me Oklahoma plus the points here in this one. Rooting for the Sooners here for personal reasons, but certainly looking for a good game here and hope everybody enjoys it. If you're new to the First and Long, hit that subscribe button. Come and hang out with us. If you're an Alabama, Oklahoma fan, love to have you come be part of the show. Tune in later this week. We'll have bets against the spread. We've got other game predictions, things going on. We hope that you'll come and join us. Hit that like button for us and come on back now. You hear? I was about to say something and I lost track. Personally, my this is Brian D in the comment section. Personally, my opinion is that Greg Sankey has told Alabama's remaining opponents to lay down, so Alabama wins big. We got a tinfoil hat guy. Is Greg Sankey telling all of Alabama's recruits to decommit right now? Because they're losing. They just lost their number one spot, and they just lost a bunch of recruits. Did y'all see that? You guys that are college football sickos like us, Alabama has lost 11 recruits from that 2025 class since Saban has left, and 3 of them just within the last week, all of them top 300 players. I'm only mentioning the top 300 players, by the way. They've lost 11 top 300 guys. Anyway, I don't – look, Brian, I don't necessarily believe in all that. I mean, I don't – has there ever been a game that's been fixed? Of course. Is it in the SEC? No, I don't think so. Although the refs are so damn bad, sometimes it feels like they're fixing stuff. But that's just because they're a 5th grade science teacher, and then they're hopping on Spirit Airlines and refereeing the biggest games in the freaking nation every weekend. So that's a lot of the problem there. And I was just explaining to those guys in the comment section about Pop and how it was Freddie Kitchens' brother. I don't know if y'all know who Freddie Kitchens is. He's currently the offensive coordinator at North Carolina. He was the offensive coordinator at Alabama. I think he went to Alabama, all that stuff. His brother is the one, Billy, is the one who gave the guys the tickets, gave my dad and Pop the tickets to go out to Oklahoma as their Alabama season ticket holders. So really awesome story there. Pop is the last one of his siblings that's alive, and he's the youngest. Actually. So, or was he? Yeah. And he's the youngest. So he's the last one. And this has been like a motivation for him for the last few months to keep going, keep fighting. I ain't going to miss that football game. I'm going to get out there to that game. And, we all, father time comes for all of us. So, I don't Pop, I don't think he's going to kill over after the game or something, but, he's getting old, and this is probably his last opportunity to do something like this. So that's one of those things that college football, it just runs through your blood. And anybody that tells you any different or doesn't understand why people are fanatics about this sport, you're missing it. You don't understand, and you've got to develop a tradition, and that's what college football has been for our family. Everybody's got their team they're rooting for, and there's been some type of tradition built in, and that's how fan bases are made in college football, and that's why I like college football so much more than the NFL. It's not just about my city. I mean, there's family ties and traditions along with being tied to these teams. My dad went to high school with Scott Warner, who caught the interception against Notre Dame in the 1980 national championship game. He's the one who got my dad into Georgia football. And here I am. I'm a Georgia fan, right? And have been for a long time. It's all these ties and everything that make the sport so good. To take the attention away from Ashton, Genty, and Boise State to keep the constant SEC narrative perpetual. Oh my God, here we go. We need to get Brian B. We need to get you some type of tabloid, college football tabloid. Brian B. again. Come on now, this year of all years to have it happen. All of a sudden, we got a potential 7-way tie for the SEC championship. Oh well, I'll tell you what happened there, Brian. We all thought that it was such an amazing idea to get rid of the East and West. Should have never done that. Alabama and Auburn should have been moved to the East, and Oklahoma and Texas should have been put in the West. Why? What y'all watch and see? These conferences are going to go back to having divisions. It's going to happen. There's getting to be too many teams, and there's going to be all these ties at the end. That's what's going to happen. All right. Truth is hurtful, I know. You don't hurt. Hey, listen, Brian, I'm here for all the – believe me, I got conspiracy theories about other things. It's not college football, but I think we've all been there, brother. Mason, you got anything to add to the show before we close it out? I have got to drive halfway across this great state of Georgia tonight, back and forth. So I got to get going here. You got anything to add?
No, go ahead and take off, man. We got more. We got 4 bigger games than we talked about tonight coming for y'all on Tuesday night. If you missed anything here, I'll be chopping up all the videos tonight and getting them onto the channel so you can go back and rewatch those, and then tune in on Thursday for our betting show as we kind of continue to gather data on these games throughout the week. We'll give you our best bets. Kind of update you on our season totals and things like that throughout the week, and then before we know it, it'll be Saturday, the second to last Saturday of the regular season. It's hard to believe the end of the season's already here, but it has been a fun one, and we look to continue the season long journey with the rest of with you guys the rest of the way.
Man, we're about to get into the best time of year, y'all. We're about to have all the holidays, all the food, all the Christmas, all the family. But beyond all that, we're going to have freaking college football games and playoff games that are played on college campuses. Something that I've been begging for years and years and years. We're finally going to get it this season. I got my fingers crossed. Georgia's going to be able to get a home playoff game. Obviously, probably not going to the SEC championship. That's a discussion for another day. We hope that all of you will come back and hang out with us on Tuesday. We'll go live again. Thank y'all so much for keeping us company in the comment section. We love hearing from you guys. I hope everybody has a really good night, and I hope that I'll see y'all soon. Thanks.